Army veteran Shane Burke was on his honeymoon when he was mauled by a mama grizzly bear.
She was attacking me to kill me because I was perceived as a threat.
35-year-old speaks out after grizzly bear attack. Insane how fast it all happens. ABC News. 2 bears, 1 man, 1 miracle. A real-life survival story of a grizzly attack. Anger, fear, and contentment are the only emotions that cross a grizzly's heart, and all these emotions revolve around eating or being eaten. They don't really form connections, but mothers share a special bond with their cubs. The protectiveness and possessiveness are driven by motherly instincts. Hence, if anything appears as a threat to their cubs, they can be ruthless. Without a second thought, they can crumple the perpetrator and throw it away like used tissue paper. This is the story of a man who survived a lethal attack by a female grizzly. Before we begin, you should know that everything in this story is absolutely real. It isn't made up and the stakes were all too genuine. This story is a reminder that sometimes truth is more thrilling than fiction. By the end, you will be restocking your supply of bear spray before heading to grizzly country. Signal Mountain is located in the Grand Teton National Park, Wyoming. It stands at almost 7,720 feet and offers breathtaking views of the Teton Range, Snake River, and Jackson Hole Valley. Unlike the other rough, tall mountains of the Tetons, Signal Mountain is an isolated peak and is accessible for hikes and drives. In earlier times, the explorers used the mountain as a landmark for navigation, and since it was a prominent peak, it became a useful point for communication and signaling. That is how it got the name Signal Mountain. Apart from the scenic views, there is also a higher chance of a potential wildlife encounter, since the mountain is home to moose, elk, and bears. The mountain is also famous for exotic species of birds that live in the dense trees. Some photographers also hike up the mountain to capture the beauty of wildlife. On May 20th, 2024, a 35-year-old man from Massachusetts visited the Signal Mountain. Shane Patrick Burke is an ex-veteran and a tumor survivor. In May, he was on honeymoon with his wife in Wyoming. He is keen on photography and loves capturing owls. On his trip to Wyoming, he knew he would encounter wildlife, so he took his camera with him as well. He did not want to miss the opportunity to picture the rare owl species. As they made it to Signal Mountain, his wife Chloe Burke stayed in the car. She was not that keen on a 1-hour hike just to see an owl, so she decided not to accompany him. Shane went up the mountain to take photos. He told her he would be back in an hour, so she just waited in the parking lot instead of driving somewhere else. He had heard about the great gray owls in Tetons National Park and was hoping to photograph at least one of them. Walking through the woods, he tried looking for the owl species but had no luck. It was summer, but the weather was still nice. The sky was clear, and the lush greenery of the mountain was more vibrant under the rays of the sun. Compared to other peaks in Wyoming, Signal Mountain is an easy hike and the fresh air did not let him get tired, so he just kept on walking uphill without even noticing how long he had been there. He reached a point and could see the complete view of the surroundings. That is when he realized he had come too far. It had been longer than an hour. He knew his wife would be getting worried. He could not afford to make her upset on their honeymoon. So instead of wandering more, he decided to go back to her. Due to poor service there, he could only see the location of parking and not a way to get there. Walking downhill in a straight path was the only way he could reach the parking lot without getting lost. However, if he just ran down there without any sense of direction, he could end up in bear territory. He had heard far too many stories of grizzly attacks, and they did not have happy endings. Shane did not want the sad story of his demise in a bear attack to become a highlight in the newspaper. He eventually did make it into the highlights, but for different reasons. One way to pass through grizzly territory is to announce your presence. So he started singing songs and talking to himself to inform the natural inhabitants of his visit. That way, they don't get surprised and hide in their spots if they want to. So he kept on making sounds while walking. However, a baby bear probably had hearing issues because it did not move anywhere safe before Shane passed by it. As he appeared in their solitary territory, the cub got scared. He immediately noticed a moving shadow in the bushes. By slightly turning to his right, he got a clear vision. It was a bear cub running uphill, almost 70 yards away from him. Instead of being pulled in by the cute baby cub, he was alarmed. The presence of the cub indicated only one thing: that the mother was nearby and she wouldn't be happy to see an intruder. The Army teaches you a lot of things, and Shane had gone through intense conditions. He had been deployed in Iraq, had been shot at, and faced explosions. In addition to all the Army struggles, he had also survived a tumor in recent years. It would not be wrong to say that he is a man of steel. Thankfully, before coming into the woods, he was fully prepared. The possibility of meeting the mother Grizzly made him form an escape plan. He took out the bear spray from his bag and held it in his hand. According to researchers, bear spray is the most effective way to deter bears. It is even better than firearms. So he held onto it tightly and waited for the mother to appear. Running was not a safe option. The bear could catch him in like 2 steps. The odds were stacked against him, but he kept his calm and carefully assessed his chances. And then the inevitable threat came in the form of a giant brown figure. As expected, the mother Grizzly had sensed Shane and was preparing to eliminate him as soon as possible. She had identified him as a threat to her baby, and she was not letting him get away with trespassing. After howling to announce her presence, she walked towards him. He yelled at it to scare it away, but she did not budge. Her eyes were fierce. They were giving away her brutal plans of dealing with him. He looked at her big, scary face and knew the grizzly would not let him go easily. After the initial shock of seeing the giant predator so up close, he came back to his senses. Then he tried to deploy the bear spray. However, the bear was faster than him. Before he could use it, the grizzly had covered the distance between them, and then she lunged at him. Even in the grip of the giant, Shane did not stop thinking. He turned around and gave her his back to attack. It was to prevent any harm to his vital organs. The attack was inevitable, so he opted for the most secure position to control the damage. The female grizzly was on him, and he was braced for the charge. Shane interlocked his hands behind his neck to protect his vitals from her teeth. Despite being scared, he did not let his emotions affect his actions. He made rational decisions and was quick to act on them. After trapping his body under her big claws, she sniffed him and found just the right spot for the first bite. As her teeth sank into his back and right shoulder, he couldn't endure the pain and screamed. The first bite did not quite satisfy the grizzly, so she turned around, stepped on his back, and eyed his legs. She was so heavy that her weight made Shane suffocate. Then she bit one of his legs, gripped it in her claw, and picked him up like he weighed nothing. After being swayed in the air, he was thrashed to the ground. This move satisfied her, so she repeated it over and over. The Grizzlies have tremendous strength, and this one did not hesitate to put on a full power show. After a couple of slams, she got bored and bit his legs again. This time, she did it at the buttock and then continued to his inner knee. She gave equal attention to both legs by leaving exactly 3 bite marks on each. Bears have a bite force 1,000 times stronger than humans. They can crush bones, but this one seemed to go easy with Shane. However, he could still feel immense pain and grunted in agony. The screams were so loud they made the grizzly look for the source of them, and that is when her eyes landed on his head. She thought to get rid of the screams before dealing with the rest of the body, so she moved to his head. His hands were still interlocked behind his neck. Locking your hands behind your neck is an essential method to prevent any direct harm to your carotid arteries. Shane had learned it in the Army, and his lessons were helping him survive. The bear spray can was still in his hands when the bear tried to bite off his neck. Her teeth landed on his hands, simultaneously rupturing the can. The can exploded in her mouth. Bear spray is a deterrent made of red pepper oil. It inflames the eyes and upper respiratory system. The explosion made a loud sound, and its contents emptied into the bear's mouth. The loud burst and the pepper oil did the job. It got scared and irritation started building in her eyes, so she got off him and ran away. Shane looked up and saw that it was gone. Without wasting another second, he got up and sprinted in the opposite direction. He was injured, but at the moment he could only think of saving his life. As he reached a distant point, he made sure the bear had not followed him, and then tried to call his wife. Due to poor service, the call could not connect. So he messaged his wife saying, "Attacked." The message could be interpreted in 1,000 different ways, so his wife panicked and called him back. He told her about the sudden bear attack. She had no plans of losing her husband to a bear attack, and that too in the middle of their honeymoon. So she turned into an emergency medical technician for the day and inquired to him about the injuries. She then instructed him to put up improvised tourniquets around his wounds to prevent excessive blood loss. He did not have anything on him to tie, so he cut the straps of his fanny pack, his backpack, and his camera, and used them to cover the injuries. Shane was also trained in first aid, and he knew he had no arterial bleeds, so he just put pressure on the wounds till rescuers arrived. He had called 911. Now he just had to wait. But there was still a possibility that the bear might come to pay a visit again, and if she did, she wouldn't forget to pay him back for the bear spray. So he rested against a tree and waited for help to arrive. He had a knife in his pocket, and it was his only remaining weapon for self-defense, so he held it close to his chest. The poor signals were not providing any accurate location. The rescuers tapped his call to find him, and once the helicopter located him, he crawled to a clearing so it could reach him easily. A ranger descended from the helicopter and assessed his wounds. They were most concerned about hypothermia due to the loss of blood. Luckily, Shane was conscious and responsive throughout the assessment. The rescuers field dressed his wounds and then airlifted him out of the woods. He couldn't feel his legs, but he was assured that none of his arteries were punctured, and the rest of the injuries were treatable. An ambulance was already waiting in the parking lot. The helicopter lowered him there, and he was taken to St. John's Hospital in Jackson, Wyoming. There, the doctors immediately reported to the emergency room and performed surgery to stitch up his wounds and clear them of any signs of infection. The park authorities did not release any reports about the severity of the attacks, but they reinforced the rules and gave clear bear warnings to tourists visiting the area. Later, in an Instagram post, Shane shared his story. He also stated that he has an immense love for nature, and this attack won't halt any of his upcoming adventures. In cases of bear attacks, the authorities tend to eliminate the angry bear from the park. They either shoot it down or relocate it to a more isolated area. Shane knew they would want to hunt the mother down. So after the initial investigation, the second thing he told the rescuers was not to kill the bear since she was only trying to protect her cub. If Shane had not encountered her cub, she would have probably stayed in her lane. It was neither the man's fault nor the bear's. The timing was just unfortunate. Her motherly instincts got her bear sprayed, but Shane was glad that both of them were alive, and the attack did not end in a bloodbath. He wrote, "What happened up on Signal Mountain was a case of wrong place, wrong time." Shane also shared that among the Iraq deployments, being shot, surviving explosions, and a tumor, the bear attack topped the list of the most violent things he had experienced. And in no way did he want to blame the grizzly for it. He only thought it was natural for the bear to think for the safety of her cub. The survivor was really thankful to the rescue teams of the park and the hospital staff for providing immediate help and taking care of his injuries. Fortunately, he did not endure any serious injuries and recovered without any permanent damage to any of his organs. The attack could have ended worse than this, but his presence of mind and quick responses saved him, and he got another exciting story to share at family gatherings. This was not the first and most definitely not the only grizzly encounter of the year in the Mountain West region of the United States. Later in September, 2 elk hunters also met a grizzly, who was not happy with their existence in its kingdom. And despite being terrified to see a grizzly in front of them, they kept their calm and dealt with the situation responsibly. One of the 2 boys shot down the massive grizzly while it was strangling his friend. The timely actions of the boy saved his friend's life. This attack took place in Caribou-Targhee National Forest, which covers the states of Idaho and Wyoming. The bear couldn't survive the attack, but the boys did, and their families were grateful for it. Likewise, Shane was just going to take photos in the woods, yet he still managed to have a bear spray on him, and that bear spray proved to be his savior. If he did not have that bear spray, we wouldn't be getting a hands-on guide on how to survive in the bear area. It can even serve as a good advertisement to skyrocket the sales of bear spray. These survival stories teach us that one should always be prepared to face the worst circumstances. If we keep our nerves in check, we can overcome the most difficult situations, even if they include tackling enormous beasts. That was it from today's video. Thank you for watching. If you have any more suggestions on how to survive in a grizzly attack, please share them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and share. For more such videos, subscribe to our channel and we will catch you in the next one.